What if I told you that Julia Roberts, at 57 years old, just spilled the tea on the 6 Hollywood heartthrobs she secretly fantasized about? We're talking about America's sweetheart finally dropping her good girl act and confessing which leading men made her forget her lines and almost forget her morals. Buckle up, because this confession is about to get spicy. But before we go on, we have a small favor to ask. Most people watch without subscribing, and honestly, we understand, but if you believe these stories matter and love our stories, then that one click makes a real difference. It costs nothing, but it helps us keep these stories alive. So if you're with us, please click that subscribe button. Picture this: Julia Roberts, now 57, sitting back with that iconic smile we've all fallen in love with over the decades. But this isn't the polished, media-trained Julia we're used to. This is raw, unfiltered, and absolutely shameless. The woman who gave us Pretty Woman and Notting Hill has decided she's done playing nice, and honestly, we're here for it. At my age, she says with that throaty laugh, I don't have to pretend anymore. And boy, does she deliver on that promise. For years, we've watched Julia be the perfect romantic lead, the girl next door with the megawatt smile who always got her fairy tale ending. But what we didn't know was that behind those sparkling eyes, she was harboring some seriously steamy thoughts about her co-stars. And now, she's ready to tell all. The confession begins. Julia leans forward like she's about to share the juiciest gossip of the century. I was surrounded by the most beautiful men in Hollywood, she admits. And if I'd let myself, well, let's just say a few of those sets might have needed new sheets instead of new scripts. Can you imagine? America's sweetheart admitting she had the hots for her leading men? It's like finding out your favorite teacher had a secret wild side. And the best part, she's naming names. Number 1, Richard Gere, the obvious choice. Let's dive deeper into what Julia really revealed about Richard Gere, because honestly, this confession is everything we suspected but never dared to hope she'd actually say out loud. The chemistry was real. Julia doesn't just admit she was attracted to Richard, she completely dismantles the idea that their on-screen chemistry was just good acting. We had chemistry, the kind you can't fake, the kind directors pray for, she confesses. And then she drops this bombshell. They called action, and half the time, I didn't need to do anything but breathe, because he'd look at me with those eyes, that sly grin, and suddenly, I wasn't Julia Roberts, Hollywood sweetheart. I was a woman trying not to climb him like a ladder in front of the crew. The necklace scene revelation. Remember that iconic Pretty Woman scene, where Julia's character tries on the necklace, and Richard snaps the jewelry box shut on her fingers? We all laughed at her genuine reaction, but Julia's revelation adds a whole new layer to that moment. What people don't know is that Richard had a way of doing little surprises like that. Things that weren't scripted. Things that made the chemistry burn hotter, she explains. Those weren't just playful moments between co-stars. They were Richard deliberately catching her off guard and her body responding before her brain could catch up. When a man like him catches you off guard, your body reacts before your brain does. Goosebumps, heart racing, heat in places the cameras couldn't see, she admits. The hotel room fantasies. But here's where Julia's confession gets really spicy. She reveals that after long days of filming, she'd go back to her hotel room alone and think about Richard. Not just casual thoughts, full-blown fantasies about what would happen if he showed up at her door. There were nights I went back to my hotel after filming alone and thought if Richard knocked right now, I'd let him in. And I wouldn't bother with words. He could leave the tie on, the shoes, too. Hell, the whole damn suit. I just wanted to ruin it on the way down. The dangerous kind of good. What makes Julia's confession about Richard even more compelling is how she describes what made him so irresistible. It wasn't that he was a bad boy, quite the opposite. He was dangerous, but not in the way you think. Not because he was bad. No, because he was good, gentle, attentive, patient. That's what undid me. A bad boy you can guard against, but a man who makes you feel safe while making you burn, that's lethal. Number 2, George Clooney, Trouble in a Tuxedo. Now, let's talk about George Clooney, because Julia's confession about him reveals a completely different kind of temptation. One that was arguably even more dangerous because it was so effortlessly smooth. The effortless charmer. Julia describes George as trouble in a tuxedo. And honestly, has there ever been a more perfect description? But what makes her confession so fascinating is her admission that pretending to be cool around George was the hardest acting I ever did. Think about that for a second. This is Julia Roberts, a woman who's delivered Oscar-worthy performances in dozens of films. But pretending she wasn't affected by George Clooney? That was her greatest acting challenge. The Ocean's movies torture. Working on the Ocean's films with George was apparently a special kind of torture. Julia describes filming those snappy little back and forths, all quick dialogue and eye contact, and how she'd find herself thinking, if he leans just an inch closer, we're not going to get through this scene without breaking some rules. While audiences were enjoying the clever dialogue and slick heist plots, Julia was fighting an internal battle every time she had to deliver clever lines while looking into George's eyes. The private joke seduction. What Julia reveals about George's technique is particularly insightful. The thing about George was that he made everything feel like a private joke. He'd wink or toss off some smart remark, and suddenly it felt like the two of us were in our own little world, even with an entire crew around. This is masterful seduction, making someone feel chosen, special, like they're in on something exclusive. That's how he got you. He made you feel chosen. And honey, when George Clooney chose you, even for a second, it was electric. The knowing seducer. Perhaps the most dangerous thing about George was that he was completely aware of his effect. The worst part was he knew it. George wasn't oblivious to the effect he had. He'd flash that smile between takes, tilt his head, and suddenly the entire set, men and women, were leaning toward him like plants toward sunlight. Julia had to maintain her professional composure while everyone else openly fell under his spell. And me? I had to pretend I was immune. Please, I was dying inside. The casino fantasy. Julia's ultimate confession about George is deliciously specific. If George had ever whispered in my ear between takes, told me to sneak off with him, let's just say those casinos we filmed in wouldn't have been the only thing heating up. Number 3, Denzel Washington, The Quiet Storm. Then there's Denzel Washington, who Julia describes as having this gravitational pull that you couldn't resist. Working with him on the Pelican Brief was like standing too close to a fire you couldn't step away from. What made Denzel dangerous wasn't that he was trying to be seductive, it's that he didn't have to try at all. He just was, Julia explains. When he looked at you, it felt like the world had gone quiet. She admits there were moments on set where she thought, if this man leans in just once, I am finished. I will forget my name, my lines, my entire career. And the truth? She wanted him too. Denzel carried himself like a king, she says, and honey, I was ready to be royalty for a night. The woman has no filter left, and we are absolutely living for it. Number 4, Hugh Grant, The Charming Stumbler. Hugh Grant gets his moment in the spotlight next, and Julia's description of him is perfection. She calls out his signature charm, the stumbling over words, the hand through the hair, the nervous act, but she sees right through it. Don't be fooled, she warns. That man knew exactly what he was doing. Filming Notting Hill with him was apparently dangerous territory. She'd be standing close, trading lines, and thinking, if he kisses me right now, I'm not stopping it. Forget the script, forget the cameras, just let it happen. The woman admits that if Hugh Grant had ever walked into her trailer one evening, hair all tousled, flashing that grin, and asked me to run away with him, she might have said yes. Just for one night, just to see if the fantasy matched the man. And honestly, we all know it would have. Number 5, Al Pacino, The Fantasy That Never Was. Here's where it gets interesting. Al Pacino. They never even made a movie together, but that didn't stop Julia from fantasizing about him more times than I care to admit. She describes him as having this intensity, like he wasn't just acting, but living every second. When a man carries that kind of fire, you can't help but wonder what it would feel like if he turned it loose on you. Julia admits to watching him in Scarface and The Godfather, thinking, if he ever looked at me like that, I'd be finished. She describes him as having this mix of danger and charm, like he could ruin you and make you thank him for it. The woman even fantasizes about what he'd be like behind closed doors, raw, real, the kind of lover who left you shaking, ruined for anyone else. Al Pacino was the storm I wanted to walk straight into just to see if I'd make it out alive. Number 6, Tom Hanks, The Unexpected Temptation. And finally, the most surprising confession of all, Tom Hanks. America's dad himself made Julia's list, and her reasoning is absolutely fascinating. Working with him on Charlie Wilson's War made her think a few things that were not decent at all. The problem with Tom? He wasn't trying to be sexy, which made him incredibly sexy. He made you feel like you were in on the best secret in the world, she explains. There were nights after filming where she'd go home, still buzzing, still thinking about the way he leaned in during a scene, the warmth of his laugh, the way he filled a room without even raising his voice. Tom Hanks was the temptation you weren't supposed to think about. Too wholesome, too good, but maybe that's what made him dangerous. The bigger picture. What makes this confession so captivating isn't just the juicy details, it's the honesty. For decades, we've put celebrities on pedestals, expecting them to be perfect, to never have inappropriate thoughts or desires. But Julia's confession reminds us that they're human too. So there you have it, Julia Roberts' scandalous confession about the 6 men who made her forget she was supposed to be a good girl. From Richard Gere's tie-tying skills to Tom Hanks' unexpected charm, these Hollywood heartthrobs left quite an impression on our beloved Pretty Woman. What I love most about this revelation is Julia's unapologetic honesty. Julia's decided she's done pretending, done being the perfect sweetheart everyone expected her to be. She's owning her desires, her fantasies, and her very human reactions to some of Hollywood's most magnetic men. It's refreshing, it's scandalous, and it's absolutely captivating. Julia Roberts may be 57, but she's proving that age is just a number when it comes to keeping us all on the edge of our seats. Who knows what other secrets she's ready to spill? One thing's for sure, we'll be listening.